Okay, so this weekend I finally went to my first cubing competition, and well, now I have a lot to talk about. Okay, where do I start? Let's make something clear. There are basically never competitions in my area. In the entire history of the WCA, there have only been 18 comps in my state and the state next to us, and most of them are over 100 miles away, so not worth it for me. But this one happened to be just 30 miles away, so it was the perfect opportunity for my first competition. So I decided to go with a friend of mine, and when we got there, we were actually really surprised. It was way more competitive than we realized. I mean, since this was the first competition in this area ever, we expected that nobody around would really be interested in cubing. But when we got there, there were all these kids with tablets with CS Timer open on them and bags full of cubes, every GAN cube you can imagine. Like, how rich are these kids? And then here I was with just my 2 cubes in this bag. They both fit in here somehow. And everyone else seemed to be way more competitive than we were. But then it was time to solve cubes in competition for the first time ever. So let me show you what happened. So I recorded most of my solves, but in the first round of each event, I didn't really know how to set up my camera. So we have this footage. But I'll talk about these rounds really quickly so we can get to the better footage soon. My first event was going to be 2x2, and I purposely didn't record these solves because DNFs are pretty easy on 2x2, and I did not want to make myself DNF. What ended up happening is my first ever official solve was a DNF anyways. Oh, and I'm not kidding, I got this DNF by solving the cube into a checkerboard pattern. Yeah, I'm also confused. Luckily, I actually solved the cube on my next scramble, and I got a time of 4.4 seconds, which I wasn't mad about. But then, the very next scramble, I got a 287. Like, sub 3 before I even got a sub 4 in comp. I was not expecting that at all. So now it was time for the first 3x3 round, and from now on I recorded all my solves. 3x3 started off very average, I guess, with a 13. This is above my average at home, but in comp I was completely willing to accept it. Then I got a 14.7, so not great, but on my next solve I got a really clean 11.8. So now I was on the right track, and after this, I couldn't believe what happened. I actually got a sub 10 in competition. That's right, 9.5 seconds. This was just so unfathomable to me because in all my practice solves, I only got one sub 10, and then my 4th solve in competition, that's a sub 10. Then I finished off with a 12.5, and my average also ended up being 12.5, so I was pretty happy with this. And then it was time for OH, which was really funny, honestly. I have not practiced this event in like 2 years, so I just went into this for fun. I wasn't expecting to do well or even meet the cutoff, which was 45 seconds. But then the first solve was on track to be like a mid 20-second solve, and then I just messed up some algorithm and had to redo the whole last layer, so it ended up being a 39. I mean, come on. Then I got a 46, which I didn't feel great about, but then a 27 out of nowhere, almost half the time of the previous solve. That just doesn't make sense, but okay. I finished with an average of 37 seconds, which is honestly way better than I expected to do, so I surprised myself, I guess. I got 13th place in 2x2 and 15th place in 3x3, which out of about 35 competitors was enough to make it to round 2 for both. But no round 2 for OH, which I was secretly kind of glad about. Okay, so on to 2x2 round 2. The scrambles for this round were very odd. I mean, first of all, we had one with a blue side just completely solved. Then next up, we had one of these scrambles that looks like it's only a few moves from being solved, but realistically, it's like a very unlucky scramble somehow. And then last, but definitely not least, I got this scramble, which is one move away from a solved layer, but then you look at the OLL, and it's just an anti-soon. So you don't even have to solve the layer, you just go into the anti-soon, and it's solved. So the entire solution was literally just the anti-soon algorithm. And you bet your boy 802 Cuber saw this solution in competition, and I got a 1.37. Yeah, first competition, and a 1 second 2x2 solve. I mean, what the heck? Okay, then I got a 420 and my average was 3.94 seconds, which I was definitely proud of. Alright, in 3x3 round 2, I wasn't really feeling the scrambles, to be honest. They were all just kind of normal, no like X crosses or skips or anything. So I ended up getting a 12 and then a DNF, so yeah, not great. But then I somehow pulled it around and got an 11 followed by 2 10s, which baffled me, to be honest, because that's below average at home. But I was in a comp, so that was awesome. And I ended up finishing with an average of 11.55 seconds, which is literally exactly what I average at home. So I have no idea how I was able to do this in comp. So I got 10th place in both of these, which was also enough to make it to the finals for both of them. The only problem is that the finals were 3 hours later, it was a hot day, and there was no air conditioning in the building. So I had to sit there and sweat for hours, and that kind of hindered my performance in the final round. In 2x2, I got a 4, followed by a DNF, and then another 4, so that was just bad overall. Then I got a nice solve that was just barely sub 3, and I finished it with a high 3. So I got a worse average than I did in the second round, and I wasn't very happy with that. I did end up retaining my 10th place position though, so I was pretty proud of that. And then the same thing kind of happened in 3x3. I was just getting subpar solves. I started with a 12, then a 13, another 13. Then I got this nice 10-second solve, which really should have been sub 10, but again, the conditions were just bad. Oh yeah, and on this solve, there must have been glue on my fingers. Then I finished with a 12.9 average, which I wasn't really happy about, but I was only unhappy for a minute or so because in reality, the competition was just fun overall, and I was really happy I went. And hey, I did set a personal record in every event, so
I kinda popped off.